Hello, and welcome to Nosotros, the podcast about San Antonio and South Texas cultura, política, y más. I'm your host, Elaine Ayala, Metro columnist for the San Antonio Express News. My guest today is Ernie Zuniga. For 17 years, he anchored Fox News First and was part of a team that created this morning show from scratch, literally from a piece of paper. In May, he signed off from that show of his own accord. He hasn't been on the air since. Well, except for 3 Cents Podcast, which he'll talk about later, and his Facebook Live talk show, Pickup Lines. Hi, Ernie.
How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to Nosotros. How you doing?
But you have such a calming voice. And I'm sure you've been told that before, but just enjoy
thanks.
Listening to you. And I am thrilled to be here. So thank you so much.
You're so nice to be here. My first question for all my guests is really an origin story. I love origin stories and a time where you can talk about your family, your roots, as well as the roots that you've created.
You know, I grew up in Victoria, a couple of hours away from here. And very early on, I'm the oldest of 3, so I have a brother and sister who both live in Virginia right now. I think I was about 10 years old. So the story goes, I was playing Little League Baseball. I was chasing girls in the playground one day at school, and I fell down and broke the ring finger on my right hand, which was my baseball throwing hand. There went my Major League Baseball career.
Oh, wow. It could have been so different.
I could have been playing for the Astros. Anyway, so my brother was playing Little League as well, and he was at his game at the Little League fields, and a friend of mine was doing the public address announcing at the game that day. Now batting number 5. Well, in between innings.
A good impression.
Yeah, no. So in between innings, my friend had to go to the bathroom. Well, the bathroom was way across the baseball fields on the other side. He didn't get back in time. So the inning started. Like, we need an announcer. Who's going to announce? And I happened to be sitting right there. And so I saw the microphone and I was like, now batting number, and it was literally
How old
10.
were you at the time?
I was 10.
Oh my God.
And I'll never forget it. And it was probably my first experience with love at first sight. Like I heard my voice kind of echoing out in the crowd, and the parents, all of them, looked up at the press box like, what is that? And I was hooked. That was it. And from that moment on, I just said, I'm going to be whatever that meant, a sportscaster, whatever. And I was a B- student, pretty much from K through college. And my teachers would always say, Ernie's a good student. On the report card, they write little notes. Ernie's a good student, but he talks too much. Got to work on his talking. And the joke was always, you know what? One of these days, I'm going to find a job where I get paid to talk. And look at us now. So here we are.
Perfect.
And the rest is history. But so no, I grew up, my mother and father, my dad was an engineer, mechanical engineer for 31 years at the chemical plant there, DuPont in Victoria. My mother was a career educator. So she taught, then left teaching to have the 3 kids stay home, raise the kids. And then as soon as my youngest brother was old enough, she started substitute teaching and worked her way back in. So by the time, before she passed away in 2012, she had got her doctorate. She got her master's and her doctorate in her 50s.
That's
late
inspirational.
40s. That story itself, if we get to it, is still just mind-blowing to me today. But, and before she passed away, she was an administrator for the Victoria Independent School District and just working her way up and just doing amazing things. And unfortunately, leukemia took her life. But so I grew up, and I think my dad, and I grew up in a house of Aggies, Texas A&M. And I think if my dad had it his way, I would have been an engineer. But it became apparent early on, my math skills and my science skills were just not. My dad was salutatorian of his high school class in Del Rio, or San Felipe High School in Del Rio. I was not salutatorian, let's put it that way. So
I'm sure you did well enough.
It skips a generation, apparently. But
Ernie is so well spoken.
Yeah, he talks so much. He's funny. He's the funny one. So I went to A&M. I tried that. It just wasn't a super. I mean, I love A&M and I love the Aggies. It just wasn't a great journalism school in the 90s. And so I ended up dropping out of A&M. That conversation with my parents when I told them I'm dropping out of A&M and I'm moving back home, because I had gotten a sports job anchoring the sports in Victoria, and I really was going to drop out of college altogether. Like I was like, I'm making $13,000 a year. I don't need a degree. Well, of course, my mother, like I said, was a career educator, and you can imagine how that conversation went. And I was not going to do that to my mother or my father. So I said, all right, fine. So we have a University of Houston branch there in Victoria. So I'll go to classes in the morning, anchor the sports at night. And I did that for about 1.5 years until I graduated.
Good for you, Ernie.
It worked out.
And you're such a good boy. Really?
Well, I try. Look, my parents, now having 3 kids myself, seeing everything through the lens of a parent, I kind of have a much greater appreciation. I had no concept at the time. They put 3 kids through private school, K through 12.
Oh,
with the
so
tuition
admirable.
costs and everything, and did all of that. My mother gave up her career to raise kids. My dad drove 30 miles a day to go to work and come back and do that over and over again. And again, now I have a much greater appreciation for what they had to do and my brother and sister, I think all 3 of us turned out pretty well.
Here's the question.
Yeah.
Everybody wants you to answer.
Uh-oh.
So why did you leave the station?
How long is your show? How much time do we have? It's a combination of things. I've told people it wasn't a decision that was made overnight or just in 2023. This was something that kind of built up over time. And it just became a combination of things. This is really the first time that I've talked about it publicly, but I think that kind of share what I've discovered. I've been gone 5 months now. I've talked to so many people who I now realize are in a similar situation as I was back then. In other words, they're on the fence. They're trying to figure out if this is it for them or if there's something else out there for them. And what are they going to do? And so, again, it's a combination of things, but ultimately what it comes down to was my belief that what I did over all those years had value and brought value. And in your head, you put a number on that value because you have to. You got to pay the bills. And so when it came time to talk about, contract negotiations, and I was about every 2 years I would do this. So I signed, 8, 9 contracts there. I would always, when I go into the bosses, I would always go in and I would hold my hand just like this. And I would say, okay, I'm here. And I was like, I don't want to keep being here. I said, I want to be this way, further up.
Reasonable request.
Reasonable. I thought so. Years went by, and it just became apparent that morning show, as much as I absolutely loved it and still love it to this day, was going to be it. There was nowhere for me to move, like to go to nights, to go to something else bigger, a bigger platform. And Lord knows I tried, and it just didn't happen. And what I believed my value to be and what the bosses believed my value to be were 2 different things, and they weren't even close. And so it just became apparent that I was going to have to make a change. And it was by far the most difficult decision that I've ever had to make. And this past summer was not a lot of fun. It was a very difficult time, and I can get into that if you want. But somebody asked me the other day, do you regret leaving? And I said, I have never had a regret leaving. I find it tremendously sad. Like I didn't want to. My quality of life right now is, as I'm talking to you, is fantastic. And I just didn't realize. I tell people, waking up at 2:30, you don't get used to it. I don't care what anybody says. You just don't. I got up at 2:30 the other morning to go to the bathroom. And I had like a momentary flashback. I was standing in the same bathroom I stood in for 17 years, looking at the same clock, thinking to myself, and it was exactly 2:30 when I would have woken up to go to work. And I literally, I stood in the mirror in the dark and looked kind of, vaguely at myself. And I was like, how in the hell did I do this all those years? Like, I don't think I know how I did it, and now I sleep until like 7 a.m. or something like that. And it's glorious. But, it's a long, complicated story. I'm at peace with the decision. I miss the show tremendously. I miss the good people that are there in that studio. You know what it's like to be in a studio and you have that camaraderie with those people that you spend so much time with.
Yeah.
Through good and bad, commercials, ups and downs, every day.
The stories we have to cover.
The stories. And listen, just the last 4 or 5 years have been a lot heavy for anybody.
So much trauma.
My last day at the station was supposed to be May 24th, which was the 1 year anniversary of the Uvalde shooting.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be, and that's just the way the contract fell. It was nobody's fault or anything. It became very evident and obvious to me. There was no way that I could sign off on that day. I just couldn't do that to those families, to anybody, myself. And so we agreed I would leave the day before. So my last day was May 23rd. And I even wore like a maroon tie that day, just as a nod to the Uvalde High School colors and just a little nod to them. Because my parents grew up in Del Rio. I've been through Uvalde, I don't know, a couple hundred times over the years, driving on 90, going from here to...
They're very comparable communities.
Unbelievable. All of them. You just, there's a row of little towns, small towns, Hondo and D'Hanis and Sabinal and all those towns, Brackettville going all the way to Del Rio. And so I when that happened, that really hit me hard too.
Yeah. Well, I heard you speak a few weeks ago, and it was at health fair that you were emceeing. And it was moving. You kind of spoke to me. I don't know if you realized it, but you spoke about your mom. You spoke about how she lived and how she died. And she was a breast cancer survivor, but then she got leukemia and spent. So you talked about mental health basically at this health fair when you spoke of yourself. And it wasn't a very long time that you spoke, but it was really poignant. And I want you to talk about that a little bit on how this time of self-reflection has paid off or has impacted your life.
Mental health, I call it quality of life as well. I'm married to a social worker who spent a lot of time working in mental health and those kinds of things. So I probably have had more exposure to that over the years, being aware of mental illness and dealing with it, the sensitivities of it and the impact it can have on families and stuff like that than maybe the average person. But no, I've just done a lot of self-reflecting in recent years, realizing my mother was 61 when she passed away. I'm 47 right now. So
I'm so sorry.
No,
so sorry.
Well, thank you. My mother had breast cancer when I was 12. And I remember vividly that time. And that was just such a crazy time. And then she got leukemia in 2011. She was 59. And so at that time I was already working the morning show. So my routine was do the morning show, drive straight to Methodist Hospital, spend as much time with her as I could before because also I had newborn twins at home when this happened. Get home to the twins, try to go to sleep at a reasonable hour, get up.
Do it again.
But yeah, my dad thankfully is still going strong. I think he's, 74 now? I tell people who know him know this already, but he and I are identical. Looks, personality, except for the intelligence. But I tell my wife all the time, how many women get to know exactly what their husband's going to look like in 25 years? She says, look at my dad.
Exactly.
I'm not kidding. That's literally, so he's doing great. He walks 20,000 steps a day. He's always checking his thing, walking around. How many steps does he have? Goes to the gym, eats well, so he's still rocking and rolling. But I have taken, especially with my kids and just, I'm on the closer side to 50 now. It's like, I got to make more time. I always made excuses when I did the morning show because I was so tired. Oh, I can't go to the doctor today. I got to I got to take a nap. I got to do something else. There's always excuses. And I realize now, if I've made this decision to leave, it's for me. It's to improve my situation. Then I better take care of my health so that if I have all these grand plans that I want to do, I can be alive and healthy enough to accomplish them.
And to enjoy them.
Yeah. And so, as a matter of fact, like when we're done today, I have to schedule an appointment. My wife went recently and got all her checkup and everything done, and she's like in a really good place, and super proud of her. And so I need to do that as well.
Your exodus really mirrored that of so many journalists, and especially in this town, Latino journalists. And of course, we're both members, and we've both been past presidents of the San Antonio Association of Hispanic Journalists. And SAHJ did commissioned really a study about TV anchors, their longevity, and
I remember that, yeah.
And it wasn't the data was not good.
I remember
Let's just
the
say
data.
that.
I remember the data. I got to say, just kind of looking back, my previous employer, I do have to give them credit because I feel like over the years, and I was there twice, so I put in a combined 22 years roughly. We did a pretty good job over the years of having a diverse newsroom. Even on air, I can remember a time not too long ago where probably 4 of the 5 most visible personalities on the morning show were Latino or Latina, and it's obviously it's changed over the years, and ebbs and flows and ups and downs. But I feel like, and there's been a lot of turnover obviously in recent years, but I do feel like over the years, even when I first started in 1999, we had a pretty diverse. I was in the sports department, and I know it's a different time now, but. There has been, unfortunately, I'm not the first, and I may not be the last, just veteran journalist to make a change in recent years. And I get back to what I said a little while ago. I find it just so sad.
Agreed. I've seen the same thing happen in newspapers. Overall, just a much more compact newsroom everywhere we look across the country.
Why do you think that is?
I think the business model has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And meeting the needs of that business model is stressful.
Yes.
It's constantly changing. It's stressful on the people who have remained, and it's stressful on those that have to make decisions to keep the organizations afloat. It's not a pretty story.
I think a lot of us too are wired. I mean, you're probably wired the same way. We just come from that generation of just work is everything, and we work more than 40 hours a week. And we work on the weekends sometimes. When I was on...
we read all the time. We're always consuming media.
I think I had an aha moment when I was coming to terms with making the decision whether I was really going to leave. We were at Disney World in April, right before Fiesta. We'd taken our daughter for a senior trip with her choir. I'm going to pull out my phone to show you what I was doing. My wife and I were together. My daughter was off with her classmates. My wife and I were in the Toy Story ride line. So like a 45-minute ride, 45-minute
wait for the ride.
And so my wife's waiting, and I'm literally with this phone, I'm sitting just doing this. And what am I doing? Well, I'm booking interviews. I'm responding to Fiesta requests. I'm checking stuff on the show. I'm answering emails. And my wife looked at me as only a wife can. And she said, "What are you doing? Like, we're here in the middle of Disney World on a vacation, and you can't put that darn thing down long enough." Yeah, and that's when I knew. And she was so right. She was 1,000% right. And that's when I said, I'm killing myself over here trying to do all this stuff in Orlando, Florida on vacation when my daughter and my wife are here. And I think that was kind of one of the moments that really kind of cemented it for me. Like, all right, it's time to go in another direction.
So you mentioned several things there, and I want to get to them. Fiesta,
Yes.
for sure, because you're a big
Viva.
Fiesta fan. And so let's talk about your involvement in Fiesta through the years. I know you've been, there you are.
Oh, my
You've been in several courts, Rey Feo courts.
This is my second court I'm on right now. And so what you're seeing right there was 2 years ago and you can see everybody's wearing a mask. We're just coming out of the pandemic. And I was the communications or the media minister for Augie Cortez, who was Rey Feo 73. And I believe, forgive me, I believe that's Augie's father. We were at Augie's elementary school. And we went and
He's a good guy.
Amazing man. And his parents, it's good parenting. But as you can see, they had me, we did 83 school visits during his run. And I was the MC. We had a skit with Spider-Man and superheroes. And I essentially emceed or moderated all of those school visits and had just an amazing time.
And now you're involved in Mr. McFadden's.
John McFadden, who I know was here not too long ago,
Yes.
another amazing man. And his talk with you was so powerful.
His
My
story
gosh.
is incredible.
Unbelievable. And so John and I were on Augie's court together 2 years ago. And John
okay.
hinted at me. He was like, I'm going to be doing this in a couple of years. I might want your help. And I was like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. Well, sure enough, John came and same thing. He asked me to be his communications and his advanced minister. And so same thing. And as you know, we started off with $1 million donation and have just
Incredible.
so blessed. I mean,
Incredible.
I can't even still wrap my brain
He's
around that.
already reached his goal and way beyond his goal.
Yeah, because I think the goal, if I'm being honest, was probably $1 million, which would have still far exceeded what the record
Anyone else
has
did.
raised. But John, of course, doesn't think like that. He's not satisfied, and I don't blame him. And so, and the two queens, the Feria Queen and La Reina Linda, just breaking records, raising
As
money.
well.
All just amazing people that I will remain lifelong friends. And I know I can't wait. I mean, it'll be August of 2024 when we're all together and they award, I think the goal is 500 scholarships
That is incredible.
for trade school. And the trade schools are now part of that.
Now that's another thing that I think was very innovative on his part. While we want to encourage all students who want to attain a college education and beyond in the professions, he thought that it was important to also encourage students who want to become electricians and plumbers and AC guys and women too. So,
For sure. Some of my closest friends are trade school graduates who went on to be just spectacularly successful entrepreneurs, businessmen and women. I'm so thrilled that they have been included because you're so right. I mean, college is a 4-year university is not for everyone.
no,
You know?
totally supportive of that
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Okay, that's Fiesta. Now, let's talk about your talk show on
Yes.
Facebook. How can we see it? And what do
Right.
you do it's called Pickup Lines?
It's Pickup Lines, and I always tell people it's not a dating show. So I'm happily married almost 25
Yes,
years. I'm not
okay.
looking for a mate. But no, so long story short, about five and a half years ago, because I worked mornings all those years, I was always around in the afternoon to pick up my kids from school. So about 5 years ago or so, I was picking up my kids at their elementary school, my twins, one afternoon. And because the traffic was so bad and those lines are notoriously slow, I had to get to the campus very early and just wait there.
Yes, in line.
30, 40 minutes,
Yes,
wait.
I've done that.
Yes.
I'm the backup picker-upper.
So, and I was just sitting there in the car day after day, 5 days a week, like, what am I going to do with all this time? I don't want to read a book. I don't want to watch. So one day I pulled out my phone because when I was doing the morning show, we did Facebook Live all the time and people really liked it. So I turned on Facebook Live and I just put it on my dashboard there and just started talking to the camera. And
You always find a camera, Ernie.
I always find a camera. But the audience was far greater than anything I could have ever expected or thought about.
So when was this that you started?
This is like 5 years ago. I think the earliest episode I found so far was in 2018.
Okay.
So, and I did it, and it turned into about a 20, 30-minute conversation about whatever. I didn't plan anything.
But you were in conversation with yourself?
No, well, I was talking to the camera.
Oh, okay.
And then comments. So what I love about Facebook Live is the interaction with people who are watching. They can,
they write
comments.
A comment.
And so people would comment about stuff, but it was never planned. So if it was raining that day, we'd talk about the weather. If the Spurs were doing something great, we'd talk about the Spurs. If this is 2018 pre-COVID. So, or I'm talking about life with twins at home, or I had a teenage girl, parenting, whatever. Well, then my wife got furloughed during the pandemic. And when the kids went back to school after virtual learning, she joined me in the car. And the audience just got bigger because she and I, same format, didn't plan anything. Now we're talking about marriage and relationships and kind of riffing on each other without, pushing any boundaries. And people loved it to the point where we would go out to events or go out in public and people will recognize Tammy and be like, that show you do, that thing in the car you do, that thing in the car. So, and they kept calling it the thing in the car. And I was like, well, I got to call this something. I got to name it something. Well, I said, listen, I would say this is the only show on earth that I know of that originates live in an actual real pickup line at a school.
Oh, that's where it came from.
So I called it Pickup Lines. Well, then it took on a secondary meaning because my attitude was, I'm not getting into, remember, this is 2018. I'm not getting into politics. I'm not getting into election stuff. I'm not getting into anything negative. I don't care, local, state, national, international. I'm not going there. That's another show. I'm here to talk about, so Pickup Lines also became like, I want to pick you up. Like, let me give you something funny, entertaining, maybe relatable, a little distraction for 20, 30 minutes. And I found there were so many other parents having that shared experience. I'm waiting in the car too, and we're all talking. And so Pickup Lines took on another meaning, like, okay, well, I'm going to pick you up today. We're going to lift you up.
That's great, Ernie.
And
that's so much your personality.
So then fast forward to, May, when I was kind of in a rough place. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was just trying to figure it all out and not having a great July. And of all people, Cleto Rodriguez, I was painting our bathroom in our room one Saturday. And Cleto Rodriguez called me, Cleto, out of the blue. And he said, well, he was checking on me to see how I was doing. And then he said, you've got this thing, this Pickup Lines, and you've got a huge audience and a platform. He's like, you need to do something with this. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And he still does a Facebook show to this day. He's like, we get sponsors and you can do this. And I'm like, you can make money off of this? And I was like, because obviously I could never do that at the TV station. So I went and spent some time with him, picked his brain. I took my notepad, like an old school reporter with a pen, and I was writing down like I was a sponge, just soak it all in. And a couple of weeks later, I get a call from a PR friend of mine who says, Carmen Gomez, she's married to Joe Gomez, the attorney, Gomez Law Fights. Hey, they like what you're doing. They see it. They want to sponsor you.
Wow.
My wife definitely cried. I was probably getting choked up. Those two phone calls, and I'm not kidding, changed everything. It just changed everything when I realized, okay, now I can do the show I want to do. I can call my own shots, and somebody's going to give me a check for this.
And the name of your show, Pickup, became something yet again because you actually pick someone up.
Well, no, yes, excellent point, because it became, again, it evolved, but now I'm using this platform, and if I can take, and Gomez Law Firm is a multi-million-dollar successful law firm, but there are other businesses out there that maybe don't have a 6 or 7 figure marketing budget, but I have a large enough audience where, hey, if I can spend some time with you on my show or put you on, I can elevate your brand or give you some love, and that helps you. And it's obviously helping me. It's like I told somebody the other day, Pickup Lines and the podcast, this is not like a hobby, like, oh, let's go screw around on the microphone for an hour and have fun. This is literally how I support my family. Like my daughter had her senior photos the other day. Senior photos are not the cheapest thing,
Oh, no.
least expensive thing in the
Nothing
world.
associated with graduations.
But I literally paid for all of it with money from these shows that I do. And my wife and I are looking at each other like, how crazy is this? You know? And I've just been blessed because I hear from people, nonprofits, for-profits, organizations that have reached out and be like, hey, I see this thing you're doing. Like, I want in on that, or how can I? And it's opened me up to meet so many more amazing people, and to be able to do exactly what we're doing right now is have a long form conversation instead of what I used to do on the air when it was like 4 or 5 minutes at a time.
At best.
At best. And then the person would leave and I was like, oh, I wish I had more time with them, you know?
And the other show, the podcast
3 Cents,
you do, tell us about that.
Well, so that became getting back to an original point that I made earlier about finding people who, you know, Mike Taylor, Cleto Rodriguez, and I do that show. We're all similar age. Mike left a long career in radio, successful long career recently. Cleto had left the TV station. He was laid off a few years ago, was doing his own content creation, and here I am. And we sat down one day and realized, well, one, we think we're pretty funny together. 2, 3 different audiences. So for whatever reason, my audience on TV and on social media to this day has always been about 2/3 women.
Oh, that's just adorable.
Right. Thank you. It's my good looks, right? That's
yes,
what it is.
It's because you're such a stud.
Right. Exactly. You can't even say that with a straight face. Mike's audience is, 80, 90% men, obviously, sports talk.
Yes.
Cleto always says his audience is bingo ladies. But in all seriousness, it's 3 diverse, unique audiences. And we get together. We think we're funny. Our wives, significant others think we're funny. So we put it out there about a month ago or 6 weeks ago. Got a really nice initial response.
And where do we watch that?
So both initiate right now on my Facebook page, and also Mike is probably strongest on YouTube. So he does his content on YouTube. Cleto does his on Facebook. I do mine on Facebook.
Okay.
But we essentially wallpaper all of the social media platforms with our shows.
Okay.
Just to try to get them out there to everybody.
And it's called 3 Cents.
3 Cents Podcast. Right now we're doing 2 episodes a week. Pickup lines, I do 1 or 2 a week. And then again, Cleto and Mike have their own shows they do, I think, 5 days a week.
Congratulations on all that.
It's been an amazing blessing. I would never be able to thank everybody individually who've reached out or offered support. Friends from the TV station, public relations friends of mine, people like you, John McFadden, my in-laws, my dad. I'll never be able to thank my wife. Tammy was just, again, with me and has stood by me through this entire thing. We likened it to jumping out of a plane. I've never jumped out of an airplane, but we kind of likened it to, in May, we were like on the edge of the plane, like getting ready, and then we jumped. And then we're like looking up at the plane and we're like, well, we can't go back in the plane now. So now what are we going to do? And
which leads to my last question, and that's what's next?
Oh my goodness. In a perfect world, I would continue to grow these 2 shows that I'm doing and just help people and continue this. I'm on record as saying that the TV news thing is not off the table. I still have a passion for it. I still think I could contribute today. And if given the opportunity with the right fit, I would certainly entertain that once again. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in that. But the crazy thing is, I told somebody the other day, I've kind of stopped predicting the future because every time I try to predict, I'm wrong, or something unexpected out of nowhere comes and just changes your trajectory or kind of, where you're going. So I'm kind of just in my lane right now, trying to focus on these things, grow them. I've got 3 teenagers at home, so dealing with all of that. And the Fiesta stuff, the Ray Feo. This is the 75th year for the Ray Feo. It's the diamond anniversary. So it's everything's going to be bigger than in 2024. So that takes up time. Because of my mother and leukemia, I'm a board member for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. So I try to be active, and I've been emceeing events and soliciting sponsors, and just trying to be busy, productive, and stay out of trouble.
I think those are good mottos. And I thank you so much for coming on the show and being so open with us. I think people have been curious for a while now. And I know you can't talk about every issue that you had at the station, but wish you well and continued success.
So many people have helped me. So if this in any way can impact somebody in a positive way, then I'm so thrilled for that. And I really appreciate you having me here.
Thanks.